In this video, I want to talk about how to read job descriptions for IT positions. Now, this isn't going to be something with a bunch of rules, if this, then this. It's going to be things you should think about when you read them. And you may think I'm completely wrong, and that's fine. Even if I am wrong about a number of things, I hope it gives you some insight into the way you should be thinking when you read them, and hopefully it will be helpful to someone. There's a lot you can tell from a job description. There are a lot of things you can't tell that should perhaps go on your list of questions to ask during the interview later on when they say, well, you got any questions for us? We'll talk about those in another video. Let's talk about my favorite type of job description. And I must make perfectly clear that while I may sound like I am looking down my nose at some of the people who wrote these or are hiring for those positions, that is absolutely, positively not correct, at least in the big scheme of things. I'm not saying these people are stupid. Matter of fact, they can be brilliant. They can be successful business people. They just don't know the things that you know about the IT business. Let me give you an example. Suppose you read a job description and it has some things in it that are kind of outdated or weird. I'm just going to make up something kind of ridiculous, but they list a bunch of things that they want you to know. Maybe you do know a bunch of them, but they come across that you've got to know how to use FoxPro version 5 and write some code that will interact with it using a Borland C compiler, Borland version 5. And you look at that and you think, what's going on here? Well, let me tell you what I think is going on when I read a job description like this. The company may not have had an IT department or an IT person. They may really still not have one. And there was somebody in the business whose job was something else, who knew a lot of business rules and knew enough about automation to know that there were a lot of things that could be improved upon, that could be automated, run the business more accurately, more quickly, and just do things in a lot of better ways. So this person taught themselves a lot of things. Nothing wrong with that. That's the way I learn most of what I know. So this person takes things within the company that he knows how to do, knows about, and writes some things using tools that are currently, at that time, available and used by lots of people. Over time, that person may not know of any good reason to update the products they're using. They may not know how to fully use all the features of the products that they are using at the time. But this person can make a dramatic difference in the company and is probably beloved. Now that person can do several things. They might go somewhere else and get a better job, IT related, or maybe to the job description that they really had, which was associated with the business. They may retire, they may die. In some cases, they may be promoted to another position because it's recognized that their contribution to the company, their most valuable characteristic is their ability to analyze and solve problems, which is what they were doing all along. In some cases, this person has written a job description describing themselves because they've gotten promoted and you were going to work for them. So, this is an interesting situation. My guess is the only person that will ever satisfy those job requirements is the person who got promoted, left, retired, or died. They don't know that though, because they don't have any knowledge of the industry. They know a lot about a lot of other things. Their business can be very successful. They can be making a lot of money at it. They may be brilliant, but they don't know some things that you know. So these are job descriptions basically for people that don't exist. Now, even if you do read that job description and you have used those products, probably in the past, very likely you already have a better job than that's going to be. But I will tell you that if you do wind up getting in a position like that and persuading people that you can bring some new ideas, you can manage to maintain their older code, some of those could be the most rewarding jobs in the world, because you may still have the opportunity to go in and change the way the business does things by what you observe and what you learn about the business rules. You won't know the business like the guy who you're replacing did immediately, but over time you might. And you will probably be welcome to investigate aspects of the business that normally we think, oh, you're hired for IT. What are you doing asking questions about this over here? Those type of businesses may very well be receptive to you being creative and doing some really neat things. From other people I've discussed this with, those kind of jobs can be the most rewarding kind of job you have. You do things and you see an immediate result. You're not part of a team for some huge project that never ends. You do something, somebody benefits, they appreciate it, and you have a feeling of achievement. As I say, these can be some of the most rewarding jobs there are. I can describe something similar. As you may know if you've watched my channel, I practiced law for a number of years. And I was a prosecutor, not in the prosecuting attorney's office, but prosecuted county ordinance violations, which, and there were huge multiples of the number of those violations, many of them trivial, some of them traffic, but they might be related to liquor law or public works, you know, inspections types of things, health laws, restaurants, that kind of stuff. And I eventually wound up working in the Bureau of Computer Services for the police department. Now, as a prosecutor, I knew what a lot of the output they had was going to be used for. And because I was a consumer of it as a lawyer, my hobby on the weekends and ultimately almost every night was I'd go out and ride around in patrol cars with police officers. And, you know, I'd go to precinct stations and see people who were trying to do things with spreadsheets pertaining to scheduling and that kind of stuff. And when I got to the police department, maybe even before, I saw all kinds of things that could be done. Either things done from scratch or modify things they'd done. Just to give you one of a gobble of examples. There was a guy in the police department who had a spreadsheet for all the police cars, kept track of when maintenance was needed, when they'd be sold, that kind of thing. Well, it was especially true at that time. The performance of spreadsheets was very poor, and as this got big, it was almost unusable. It should have been a database application for several reasons. Although you can do miracles with spreadsheets, when you're dealing with one-to-many relationships, reporting, and things like that, many of these things are database applications. And you convert them, they get better performance, they can do things they hadn't dreamed of. As I say, yeah, you're going to tell me you can do it with a spreadsheet, but there are preferred ways of doing some things that are faster, easier, and there's some things that just ought to be database applications. Spreadsheets made by people have been, I think, some of the greatest source of Full Employment Act for some database people, because eventually it needs to become a database application. You really have a feeling of accomplishment. In the police department, there was also a major secretary who kept track of false alarms. More than 3 in a year, you have to pay $25 a piece. And she sent out the letters and kept track of the payments that were made. So I wrote a little program where she'd enter the stuff, it'd generate the letters, she'd do the payments, she could track who paid, who didn't pay, that sort of thing. Well, that backfired to a certain extent because the program basically meant she could do that in a fraction of the time that she did before. No program that I ever did like that ever caused anybody to lose their job, but it did mean that they could be assigned additional responsibilities. Now in her case, that wasn't a bad thing because all this alarm stuff was not particularly exciting. She worked for a major and answered his phone, maybe it did a few other things. But now she could do some more interesting work as well. So you have those kinds of applications, small applications. Maybe a company does have a big application that maybe this person who taught themselves wrote, but they also have a ton of other things that were automated, could be improved using things you know about technology. Again, you don't know the business rules yet. I think those are great jobs. But when you read those job descriptions, you should realize that there probably is no person who meets their requirements. And so if you think you can work your way into such a situation, and as I can say, it can be very, very rewarding, you should apply for it, and at some point they'll figure out that person doesn't exist that they're looking for. Nobody knows the exact skill set of this person who did these things, that the way they're doing it is outdated, the tools they're using it are outdated. And if you can somehow get far enough in the process to be able to gently bring them up to speed on those issues, I mean, those are great jobs. They may not pay as well as some other jobs, but they're very rewarding. Now, there's another type of job. Let's look at other job descriptions. A lot of job descriptions were clearly written by somebody who knew something, and they'll contain things about required skills and nice to have things, desirable things. Once again, it's not going to be clear. Are you replacing somebody who had those skills? Are you being added to a work group where everybody has essentially the same skills and you are expected to have essentially those same skills? Are they going in a new direction and you're going to be the person that leads that? Not in a management position, but as a part of some other team that you'll work with. Those things are much harder to discern from a job description, if at all. But let me give you an example of how that can still be weird. I used to work with a guy, he was basically an infrastructure guy, did some programming. And when he did some programming, he always tried to make it a bit interesting for him. So he always wrote a program that required that he do something with the Win32 API, whether it was really necessary or not. If somebody wrote a job description to replace him, would they include, oh yeah, you've got to know the Win32 API, how to access it and that? Well, in the first place, it wasn't really necessary. And in the second place, even if it was a trivial part of his job, and I could teach you the fundamentals of accessing the Win32 API through a .NET language in about 10 minutes, and you'd be able to read any code that was written accessing the Win32 API, and over time you would be able to figure out how to do other things if you wanted to. Now, the job description for his position would not have a heading Win32 API programmer wanted. If it was, I think you might say, I don't have that skill, I think I could get it, but they're pretty specific here, and that's important to them, and that's not me, and I'm not going to apply. But let me give another example. I've done a lot of different things, tons of things I don't know, more things I don't know than I do, but I know there are a lot of things I could learn if I needed to. Some of them would be difficult, some of them would be trivial, and let me give you an example. Suppose somebody has a web environment and they want somebody to know maybe about even IIS servers, some infrastructure things, some web development things, and they say, oh yeah, we have some code in Python that you have to maintain. I barely know how to spell Python, but I do know that the things that I have done are so similar to it that I have no doubt that in very short term I could learn to do that. And even if I didn't know that, you could look at my resume and very likely could say, yeah, he did this, plus look at all this other stuff that he's done. So a lot of times people put things in as a job requirement that really shouldn't even be in the nice to have category. There should be a third category, things you may not know, but which, if you can do all this other amazing shit we put in the job description, we know you'll be able to pick up pretty quick. So, part of the point of this is even in job descriptions written by highly technical people, they may not exactly know how all these skill sets that they're describing fit into things. There are some that are major things, some that are minor things, some that are minor things you're going to have to do, but we don't care if you don't know them now because it's trivial. So in other words, if you had this job description with all this stuff and it said something about Python in there, I'd probably go ahead and apply for it. If the job description said Python programmer wanted, I probably wouldn't. Even when you have job descriptions written brilliantly by certain people, I look at so many of them and say, the person they're looking for doesn't exist. I'm going to go ahead and apply for it. Because if I'm correct, they either really knew nobody like that existed, or they're going to learn very quickly when they get job applications and none of the people meet their job requirements. I don't know what percentage I'm talking about, but I think it really is a very large percentage of people, of job descriptions, where there is no person currently searching for a job who meets the job requirements. There's a joke in my family. My brother-in-law got his PhD and was looking for positions to teach at various colleges and universities, and all those job descriptions wanted you to know about it. A lot of stuff about math, be able to teach these courses. And my brother-in-law said, Gauss is dead. Now Gauss, a famous mathematician who had a lot of skills, basically what he was saying is these people don't exist. So there will occasionally come up times in the family when we're talking about things, and basically it is appropriate just to say Gauss is dead. Someone you're looking for does not exist. And if they did exist, they may already have a job and may not be reading your job description. So you have to look at a job description and sort out, even though they may break it down into required and nice to have or whatever, what are the major skills there, which if somebody didn't have them, it would be not to your advantage to hire them because there probably is somebody that has these major skills. Which ones are the minor skills, which are similar to or not? But you know, if you've got some of these major things in your resume, it demonstrates that you can learn things. Now, some people have job descriptions that are extremely specific. They need somebody to come in and sit down right now and do something immediately. And even in job descriptions where you are missing the Python or something like that, you can probably do a lot of those. I don't think there are many that really say you've got to know every last thing of these 15 things. Because they're probably describing the guy that left, or someone is describing themselves in the job description, and they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they might need. They just say, I want somebody like me. Well, the only person like them is them. So you need to read job descriptions, one, and stop feeling inferior because you don't satisfy any of them, even though you have some valuable skills. Find job descriptions that are close and try and figure out, why is this in here? And you may apply for the job and get an interview for one reason or another. And these types of things will be things you want to ask in your part of the job interview pertaining to, yeah, I know I work in a team, am I the only one? We'll talk about the interview in a later video. So look at the job description and try and figure out and do some research. What kind of company is doing this? What kind of size IT department will they have? Which will not be dispositive of the issue. And you want to say, do I want to apply for this job anyway, because nobody's going to satisfy this? Do I want to say, I want to apply for this job because clearly there's a lot I can do for them and I would love to do it, very possibly at a lesser salary than you might get somebody else, because I think those jobs can be fantastically rewarding. So then there are other things in job descriptions which frankly are almost silly. I'm going to say them anyway and tell you why I think they're silly, but maybe should still be in there sometime. Do you have good communication skills, reading and writing? Now let me ask, if you know somebody, or you yourself, have ever read a job description and said, gosh, I meet this job, but you know, they want me to have good communication skills, or be personable, or get along with someone, or multitask, any of those things. Has anybody ever seen a job description that perfectly describes them or somebody else but said, no, we're not going to do it. I just don't have a good personality. I can't work well with others. Maybe. I don't know. But even if those people don't work well with others, don't have those skills, you're probably still going to apply for the job because you don't recognize it. Now you may have some weaknesses. I have some objections about multitasking, which I'll put in another video. Frankly, I think multitasking doesn't exist, and I think there's research to support it. And then when people say they want you to multitask, they really mean something else. And I'll just go ahead and say it. What they usually mean is we want to be able to distract you with the stream of consciousness ideas of your boss, and you keep smiling and say, yes, sir, or yes, ma'am. Okay, so that's a start. I may supplement this if I think of things about the job description that I can think of. And then we'll move on to the technical interview. And after that, we'll move on to what I call, there may be a much better term for this, the three-head interview, where you've applied, you've had the technical interview, and then they want to meet you. You look great on paper. The phone interview is great. But they want to meet you and see if you have three heads. Now that's a metaphor. It has nothing to do with your physical appearance usually. It has to do with meeting you, interacting with you as a person, seeing how reasonable you are, how they can get along with you, by discussing things with you, what sort of personnel problems they can anticipate in the future. So, let's stop it for now, and I'll either append something to this video and work my way on to the technical interview, the technical IT interview.